Welcome to the tutorial on business communication. Today the chapter is communication barriers. What is communication barrier? Any obstructions or hindrances that disturb the smooth flow of messages from the sender to receiver may be termed as communication barriers. Such barriers may lead to distortion of communication. Any problem that distorts the message is called the communication barriers. We can see another two definitions. Communication barriers are those issues for which communication efforts fail to achieve the sender's objective. Another definition is anything that prevents us from receiving and understanding the message is called communication barriers. Broadly, there are four types of communication barriers. First one is sender related barriers. Second one is receiver related barriers. Third one is barriers related to both sender and receiver. Fourth one is situation related barriers. Here there are some sender related barriers. The first one is lack of communication goals. Lack of communication goal can lead to formulation of incoherent messages. If the sender doesn't know the goal of communication, then he or she may create a inconsistent message or incoherent message. The second barrier created by the sender is absence of communication skills. Lack of communication skill on the part of the sender will make it difficult for the receiver to understand the message clearly. The third barrier created by the sender is wrong choice of media. The message may not even reach the receiver if the right media is not used. And the fourth barrier created by the sender is abstracting. If the abstract is not fairly representative of the whole situation, the message will fail to achieve its desired results. So whenever the sender is abstracting the message or summarizing the message, it should include all the facts so that the receiver can understand it easily. The fifth one, slanting. Slanting occurs if unfavorable aspects are emphasized when describing the situation. The sender should not do any slanting whenever he is sending or transmitting the message. The sixth barrier created by the sender is absence of interpersonal sensitivity. That means insensitive individuals often use a language which is offensive to the receiver. That's why whenever we are choosing language, we should be cautious so that insensitive language should not be used. And the seventh barrier created by the sender is inconsistent behavior. Unnecessary shouting or laughing by the sender may hinder proper communication. That's why behavior is an essential issue whenever sending the message. The eighth barrier created by the sender is differing frames of reference. That means lack of shared experiences may result in miscommunication. And the ninth barrier created by the sender is fear. The sender should have friendly behavior while sending the message to ensure that the receiver doesn't have any fear. Either or thinking. Use of either or thinking creates inflexibility and hinders the communication. Here we can see the receiver related barriers. The first one is negative attitudes and opinions. If the message does not agree with the attitudes and opinions of the receiver, it will act as a barrier to proper communication. The second one is wrong inferences. If the conclusion based on facts are wrong, they will create barriers to proper communication. Closed mind. People with deep-rooted prejudices are supposed to form a closed mind and prove difficult to communicate with. The fourth one is suspicion about the source of communication. If the receiver is suspicious about the source of communication, he or she is not going to receive the message properly. Inattentiveness. Inattentiveness on the part of the receiver is supposed to create distractions, thereby making the communication effort unsuccessful. And the next one is poor retention. If the listener is very poor in his power of retention, then the message may fail to produce the desired results. The seventh one is non-evaluation of the message due to distrust of the receiver. That means if the receiver doesn't believe the message of the sender, then he or she will not evaluate the message. Ultimately, there will be no feedback. That's why communication will be hampered. And the next one is selective and poor listening. If the receiver doesn't concentrate to the message, then the message will face a communication barrier. And the next one is wrong perception. If the receiver has a wrong perception about the sender or the message, then it will create a barriers for smooth communication. And the last one is meta communication. An additional idea accompanying every idea that is expressed may also create barriers. That means whenever you are sending 2 or 3 ideas in one message, the receiver will be unable to understand the message. So that issue is called meta communication. Here we can see the barriers related to both senders and receivers. The first one is status consciousness. Both superiority and inferiority complexes may result from this type of consciousness. This superiority and inferiority complexes creates hindrance or problems in the communication process. Second one is emotional. If the sender is emotional, she or he will fail to organize his message properly. And the third barriers created by both sender and receiver may be interpretation of words. A single word may have different meanings in different situations. Whenever the receiver is interpreting the words or whenever the sender is interpreting in words, they should be cautious because one word may have different meanings. And the fourth barriers related to both sender and receiver is denotative and connotative meaning of words. Connotative meaning of words provide scope of personal judgment and reactions. That means whenever the receiver is decoding the message, he shouldn't use his personal judgment. And the same is when the sender is sending the message, he shouldn't use any personal judgment. And here we can see the situation related barriers. The first one is noise. Noise is anything that distorts the message. In the time of communication, adverse situations should be avoided to prevent noise. And the second one is communication climate. The climate in which communication takes place influences the effectiveness. So, surrounding environment should be considered while sending or receiving the message. The third one is distance. If the receiver and the sender situated in a long distance place, then despite the use of latest technology, distance may become a barrier. And the fourth situation related barriers is mechanical failure. Whenever we are using any media, then mechanical failure is a common issue. That type of mechanical failure should be avoided while sending or receiving messages. And the fifth situation related barrier is time pressure. Time pressure can cause a poor communication. And the sixth one is information overload. The receiver cannot accommodate a heavy load of message from the sender. That's why the message should be clear, concise, so that the receiver can easily understand it. The last one is jargon. Jargon means any technical words to any profession. Each profession has its special vocabulary. When it is used outside the group, it becomes jargon. And whenever as a communicator you are using jargon, you should provide a proper explanation or full form of those jargon. As a communicator, whenever you are sending your message or receiving your message, you should be aware of those type of barriers so that the communication takes place smoothly. Thank you.